What if the most important geopolitical shift happening right now isn't unfolding in a war room, a summit, or a televised debate, but at airport departure gates? Right now, without dramatic headlines or urgent breaking news banners, Canadians are changing their travel patterns. And the direction of that change may surprise you. Flights to the United States, once automatic, routine, almost instinctive, are shrinking. Meanwhile, travel access to China just became dramatically easier. No sirens, no speeches, just booking confirmations and boarding passes. And when consumer behavior begins shifting quietly before political leaders publicly acknowledge it, that's when analysts take notice. Because behavior is often the earliest indicator of confidence. This isn't about a viral moment, it's about a pattern forming in plain sight. And patterns, when sustained, reveal something deeper than rhetoric ever can. So the question tonight isn't simply where Canadians are flying, it's why, and what that movement signals about influence in North America. The catalyst for this shift appears straightforward. China announced that Canadian citizens can now travel visa-free for up to 30 days. On paper, that may look like a routine diplomatic adjustment, but in global mobility, small policy changes can carry enormous strategic weight. Previously, Canadians planning to visit China faced a process that included paperwork, embassy coordination, processing times, and fees that could approach $200. For many travelers, that friction was enough to postpone or cancel a trip entirely. Now, that barrier has been removed. A passport, a ticket, a departure date. That's it. The removal of friction does more than save money. It changes psychology. It transforms hesitation into accessibility, and when accessibility expands, curiosity often follows. This isn't simply about tourism, it's about business meetings, educational exchanges, family visits, and exploratory travel. In a world competing for talent, capital, and influence, ease of entry sends a powerful message. It signals openness, and in international relations, perception of openness can translate directly into long-term engagement. Policy announcements are one thing. Market behavior is another. And airlines offer perhaps the clearest window into real-time demand. Canadian carriers like Air Transat and WestJet have reduced or suspended several U.S. routes that were once considered stable seasonal staples. These are not symbolic gestures. Airlines operate on tight margins and complex forecasting models. Aircraft are expensive assets. Routes are evaluated based on demand, profitability, and forward bookings. If flights were consistently full, those routes would remain. Instead, capacity is being redirected elsewhere, toward Europe, Asia, and other global markets. That's not political commentary, that's operational adjustment. Airlines respond to where consumers are choosing to go, and when a pattern of reduced U.S. travel emerges, even modestly, it signals something beyond temporary fluctuation. It suggests reevaluation. It suggests diversification. And diversification in travel often mirrors diversification in broader economic thinking. Because when confidence shifts, even slightly, behavior follows, and airlines are often the first to register that movement. For generations, the United States occupied a unique position in Canadian life. Geography made travel easy. Culture felt familiar. Economic integration was deep and extensive. For Canadian snowbirds escaping winter, destinations like Florida and Arizona were almost tradition. For businesses, American cities represented primary markets. For families divided by the border, cross-border visits felt routine. The United States wasn't just a partner, it was the default setting. That kind of gravitational pull doesn't develop overnight. It's built over decades of trust, proximity, and shared systems. But defaults remain powerful only as long as they feel effortless. And when the effort required begins to feel heavier, whether due to policy tension, perception shifts, or global alternatives expanding, even deeply rooted habits can slowly evolve. This doesn't mean rejection, it doesn't signal hostility, but it does indicate reconsideration. And reconsideration, even subtle, is worth examining. Because when long-standing habits loosen, they rarely return unchanged.
In global affairs, influence isn't just measured in military strength or GDP, it's measured in access. The easier it is to engage with a country, the more likely individuals and businesses are to explore it. Removing visa requirements removes more than paperwork, it removes uncertainty. It communicates that entry is straightforward, that exchange is encouraged. That psychological signal can be powerful. For a student considering international exposure, simplicity matters. For an entrepreneur exploring partnerships abroad, efficiency matters. For families separated by continents, emotional convenience matters. When barriers fall, curiosity rises. Meanwhile, when other relationships feel politically tense, even if unrelated to tourism, perception shifts subtly. People gravitate toward environments that feel stable and predictable. Travel, investment, education, these decisions are rarely purely analytical. They're emotional, psychological, and influenced by tone. In a competitive global landscape, the perception of welcome can be as influential as formal agreements. In recent years, U.S.-Canada relations experienced periods of strain, particularly during trade renegotiations under President Donald Trump. Tariffs were introduced, negotiations became more confrontational, the rhetoric surrounding economic leverage intensified. Supporters argued that strong tactics were necessary to protect American interests. Critics suggested that the approach risked unsettling long-standing partnerships. Regardless of political viewpoint, tone influences atmosphere, and atmosphere influences confidence. When trade relationships feel uncertain, businesses explore contingencies. When supply chains face unpredictability, diversification becomes prudent strategy. That doesn't mean alliances dissolve, it means risk management evolves. Canada remains deeply connected to the United States economically, but even within strong partnerships, strategic recalibration can occur. And recalibration, by nature, involves exploring options. In global economics, having options equals leverage, and leverage shifts dynamics, even among close allies. Beyond policy and economics lies something more intangible: emotional climate. Travel patterns are often reflections of sentiment. People choose destinations where they feel comfortable, welcomed, and secure. Political polarization, heated rhetoric, and trade disputes can subtly influence how a relationship feels, even if day-to-day interactions remain friendly. Consumers don't always articulate these influences clearly, but they respond to them. If one destination feels administratively simpler and diplomatically warmer, and another feels entangled in complex negotiations, even temporarily, preferences can adjust. It doesn't require dramatic disagreement, it only requires a shift in tone. And tone travels quickly through media, business circles, and public conversation. Emotional perception, once altered, can guide decisions quietly but consistently. Over time, those decisions accumulate into trends, and trends, once visible, influence strategic planning at higher levels. It's essential to distinguish diversification from departure. Canada is not disengaging from the United States. Trade volumes remain immense, cultural connections are enduring, security partnerships continue, but diversification signals maturity in global strategy. It suggests reducing reliance on any single partner by expanding options elsewhere. Airlines adjusting routes reflect that philosophy. Governments negotiating broader agreements reflect it as well. Diversification reduces vulnerability and increases bargaining strength. In a global environment marked by competition and rapid change, flexibility becomes valuable currency. If Canada expands engagement with Asia, Europe, or emerging markets, it doesn't erase its American ties, it simply broadens its portfolio. And portfolios, by design, distribute influence across multiple channels. That evolution can subtly reshape power balances over time. At a broader level, this development fits into a global competition for influence. While Washington has at times emphasized domestic priorities and protective trade measures,
Beijing has signaled openness through targeted policies like visa exemptions. Whether symbolic or strategic, such moves shape global perception. Influence today is not solely about economic size or military reach. It's about connectivity, how easily people, capital, and ideas can move between borders. Countries that lower barriers often position themselves as hubs. Countries perceived as complex or unpredictable may experience gradual redirection of engagement. These perceptions aren't static, they evolve with policy choices. And in an interconnected world, perception can become reality through repetition of behavior. Each redirected flight, each new partnership, each expanded exchange reinforces narrative momentum.
So where does this lead? Not to immediate rupture, not to dramatic realignment overnight, but perhaps to incremental evolution. Influence rarely collapses dramatically. It shifts gradually through accumulated decisions, a canceled route here, a new agreement there, a redirected investment, a simplified visa policy. 5 years of subtle movement can reshape economic patterns more effectively than one explosive event. The key question isn't whether Canada values its relationship with the United States. It clearly does. The deeper question is whether the era of automatic alignment is transitioning into an era of strategic flexibility. If so, that transformation will unfold quietly, measured not by speeches but by behavior. Departure boards updating, routes expanding in new directions, and each update telling a story about where confidence is flowing next. The world is watching these signals carefully, because sometimes the most meaningful shifts are the ones that happen without announcement, until suddenly they redefine the landscape.